Avatar: The Reckoning of Roku. I'm a huge Avatar: The Last Airbender fan and have been keeping up with this Chronicles of the Avatar series. This is the 5th book in the series, but the first to be written by Randy Ribay. It's also the first in the series to focus on Avatar Roku, who was the Avatar before Aang. I haven't loved all of the previous books in the series, but I've still more or less enjoyed them. Has this book been as good as the others? Let's find out. As per usual, massive spoiler warning, I will be spoiling all kinds of Avatar content in this video. If you haven't watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, get on it, then come back to this video. Let's start with the good. Like the previous Chronicles of the Avatar books, this one just feels like Avatar. It definitely feels like it has the vibe of the world that the original show inhabited, but it's also slightly more mature. You can tell that the author really has an understanding of the world of the original Avatar series and wants to respect the world that that show created, but also wants to tell a story that's a little bit more mature. I also really like kind of the main premise of stumbling upon an uncontacted tribe, but in the Avatar universe. That's such an interesting premise, and it's something we haven't really seen before. I also really like the way that the culture of the Lombok clan is portrayed. It's revealed in a very organic way, and it's something we haven't quite seen in the Avatar universe before. As far as kind of the specific plot elements go, I really like the bond that Gyatso forms with Roku. I had forgotten that in the original series it stated that Roku and Gyatso are friends, and this novel really helps flesh out their friendship. I think Gyatso is also a really well-rounded character. He feels like a younger version of the Gyatso we knew in the original series, and his arc where he slowly learns to regain his airbending is really well written. I also really like the new character of Malaya who's introduced in this novel. She has an interesting personality, and she's just a unique character in the Avatar canon. I also want to mention the voice performance by Nancy Wu in the audiobook version that I listened to. She does a great job giving each character a distinctive voice that adds to their personality. Let's move on to the mixed. The biggest mixed bag for me is probably Roku's character arc. I like the idea of him having to let go of his attachment to the Fire Nation and embrace his role as the Avatar, but the arc itself I feel was not executed particularly well. I also just think that the plot in general is pretty mixed. I like most of the core ideas and themes, but the plot itself feels very disjointed and unfocused at times. And the character of Sozin is a really big mixed bag as well. I do like that we get some scenes from his POV, because it helps us understand his worldview. I like that he's shown as being very pragmatic and very driven, but I also think that his fall to the dark side is way too rushed. In the opening scene of the novel, he's joking around with Roku. However, only a few chapters later, he's blatantly manipulating Roku for his own personal gain, and then towards the end of the book, he just straight up murders somebody in cold blood. I wish that his descent into evil was slower and more purposeful. Another character that's a big mix for me is the villain of Ulo. I like his plan and his motivation, but I wish he had a bit more personality. Let's move on to the negatives. The inclusion of Wan Shi-tong's library just felt like blatant fan service. I also think that Sozin was able to find it way too easily. I also found it really contrived that Gyatso was able to figure out that Sozin was manipulating Roku. At this point in the story, he hadn't even met Prince Sozin, but is able to piece together his master plan just from a few fragments of information. I also think that Roku forgives Sozin way too easily in the end. He found out that his best friend had lied and manipulated him for his own personal gain and just kind of lets it go. And in typical Avatar fashion, this book ends with a bit of a deus ex machina. Roku manages to unlock both airbending and earthbending, and uses them to defeat the villain. However, I will say that this Ex Machina isn't as bad as some others in the franchise because it does make a degree of diegetic sense. So overall, I think this novel is fine. I like some of the characters and I do think it fits well in the Avatar universe. However, the plot is messy and I think the characters needed more nuance. If you're a fan of the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender, you'll probably get some enjoyment out of this novel, but if you're not, I'd probably recommend skipping it. I'm gonna give it a mixed leaning negative review. So that's it. That's my thoughts on Avatar: The Reckoning of Roku. What about you? Did you like or dislike this book? If you want to see more Avatar content, click this playlist right here. As per usual, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Bye.